Hello, everybody. For all the students who are here, a very, very warm welcome to the family. As you always say, welcome to the family. Now, before we get on to today's session, I want to talk about some things that probably are going on in your head, considering today's environment. And I want to tell you a small incident of what happened with me, when I was passing out. Unfortunately, when I was passing out, almost all MT programs were sealed. There was technically no place for management trainees in any other hotel chains. But this German chef that I trained under, he told me, and that thing is stuck in my head. He says, "Cowboy," he used to call me cowboy. He says, "Cowboy, don't worry. As long as people have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you will have a job." And that is something that has stuck with me for the rest of my life. So that's what I want to tell you guys, that what you're getting into is recession proof. Don't worry about it. Tough times or not tough times, people will still be eating. They will still need to be served. So the worries, if you have any, you can cast them aside and focus on gaining as much as you can over the next 3 years. ये बहुत important है आपको समझना कि बाहर क्या हो रहा है वो एटलीस्ट इस इंडस्ट्री में मैटर नहीं करता. आप कितना अब्सॉर्ब कर रहे हैं और कितनी नई स्किल्स पिकअप कर रहे हैं वो इस इंडस्ट्री में मैटर करता है. There are ups and downs in the world economy and so on and so forth, but what is definitely doesn't go up and down is the fact that everybody in this world has to have 3 or at least 2 meals. And if you are the one who's cooking those meals, imagine 7.3 billion people is your market. So, let's put that aside. And today I'm going to say the same thing. All you cowboys, don't worry about it. As long as people have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you will do well for yourself because you've chosen an industry and you've chosen an alma mater, an institute that sort of will take care of it. All you need to do is devote. All you will need to do is get absorbed and absorb as much. And all you need to remember is this is like riding a bicycle. Somebody will give you a 100-page manual. You can read it for 5 years. You won't be able to ride a bicycle. You need to be able to ride a bicycle to ride a bicycle. So, do as much as you can. That is the only way forward. Yeah. Now with that, we'll talk about what cooking is and what it means to all of you. It would have been great to sort of ask you, but we'll figure out for now. Let it be a one-way communication. So a lot of people think that cooking is magic. A lot of people think because it is an act of creation और कुछ नहीं से suddenly बहुत कुछ बन जाता है तो लोगों को लगता है कि ये जादू है. Yeah. But if you have to historically go down the road, technically around 150,000 years ago, this phenomenon of cooking started. And the phenomenon of cooking probably started with man's food that he used to eat raw, suddenly falling on a fire that he had created, because by that time he'd learned to create and control fire. And then he probably realized that the taste of food has changed. मजे की बात यह है कि 150,000 years में कुछ change नहीं हुआ है. आज भी खाने के लिए आग लगती है और खाना लगता है. The basic principle of cooking is still the same. The basic principle of cooking is application of heat to an ingredient causes it to become more palatable, is what we call more tasty. And that's एक वो खाने का basic premise आज भी वही. यानी कि 150,000 years में कुछ change नहीं हुआ है. Yeah. So for you to understand cooking, first of all, you need to be comfortable with this magic of cooking. And for you to understand the magic of cooking, like any other magic, there is science behind it, and you need to be able to understand science behind it. Okay. What I am going to give you at the end of this session, as I'm going to give you 2 lenses. मैं आपको 2 चश्मे दूंगा और उसके बाद अगर आप हर खाने को वो चश्मे लगा के देखेंगे तो आपके लिए खाने को समझना, बनाना और रेप्लिकेट करना इजी हो जाएगा. Everything that you do in the food world can be viewed through two lenses. Okay, the first lens that you need to view cooking from, okay, is the application of heat. Okay, and what is heat doing to your food? Anything that is cooked, all right, technically it gets cooked because heat is applied to it. And heat gets applied in various forms. It can be dry heat, it can be moist heat, various forms of heat sort of gets applied to it. There is a certain reaction that happens to an ingredient before heat was applied and after heat was applied. It is very important to understand and break down every reaction, saying अगर दाल है तो पकने से पहले कैसी थी, पकने के बाद कैसी है, क्या change हुआ, what change did the application of heat induce in every ingredient in that recipe, is one lens that you always have to carry with you and put it on whenever you're looking at the process of cooking. Okay, something as basic as a tadka or a bagar. If you have a bagar, and if I were to give you rai and curry leaf to eat like that, you probably would find the rai bitter. But the moment I put it in a tadka, suddenly the rai becomes nutty. The curry leaves become aromatic. Now, it is very important for you to first observe the reactions that heat causes in food. Okay? For your ability to do that, you need to be able to understand the ingredients and what they were before cooking and what they are after cooking. And that is very, very important for all of you to understand. आप सबको ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है कि गर्मी से इस खाने में क्या चेंज हुआ. ओके, और ये आपको, अगर आपको शेफ बनना है तो ये आपको सारी जिंदगी ये चश्मा अपने साथ कैरी करना पड़ेगा to be able to wear it when you want to understand food better and cook food better. The second lens that you need to, and I will sort of explain these lenses in due course of time, but the second lens that you will have to understand is there's another reaction that is happening when you're cooking, and that is the reaction of how various ingredients react with each other. Okay, and that is something that sometimes takes a little more experience, but it's a skill that you need to continue to hone over the years. बहुत important है आपको वो skill को hone करना कि अलग अलग ingredients जो अगर आप अलग अलग taste करेंगे और cooking में उनको एक साथ taste करेंगे तो उनमें क्या बदलाव आता है. These are, and this is pure science, okay, and I'm going to sort of dwell on that science for you. It is, but for all of you who are not science students, it is not rocket science. Okay, it is something that you studied in class 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. It is something probably which you didn't think of applying in the food world, but like everything else, cooking is also science, and for you to build on that art, you need to understand the science first. Okay, so far what we've done is we've all called you cowboys and told you not to worry about anything. Okay, we've all told you that जब तक लोग खाना खाएंगे आपके पास काम रहेगा, इसलिए वो चीज निकाल दीजिए दिमाग से. उसके बाद हमने ये समझा कि खाने का जो perspective है, the perspective of food and the idea of cooking is the same for the last 150,000 years. It has not changed. Cooking was and cooking still is the application of heat to an ingredient. Okay, only thing that has changed is पहले आग होती थी, ingredient होता था, फिर कहीं बीच में बर्तन आ गया. वो बर्तन पहले पत्थर के थे, फिर मड के थे, फिर कॉपर के थे, ब्रॉन्ज के थे, फिर स्टील के हुए, फिर लोहे के. That is the only thing that has changed. Otherwise, it's just the application of heat to an ingredient. That was the second part that we have covered so far. It is important for you to keep understanding that and telling yourself that, so you become more comfortable with the process of cooking, saying हम कुछ नया नहीं सीख रहे हैं, 1,50,000 साल से वही है cooking जो आज है, कुछ change नहीं हुआ है. It makes you feel more comfortable. The next thing that we discussed so far was that you need to have two lenses with you. आपको किसी भी cooking process को देखने के दो चश्मे आपके पास हमेशा होने चाहिए. एक तो ये कि heating से पहले वो ingredient क्या था, heating के बाद वो ingredient क्या हुआ, और दूसरा वो bunch of ingredients जब हमने उनको हीट किया तो उनके आपस में उन्होंने कैसे रिएक्ट किया. These are the two lenses that you need to look at from a food perspective throughout, and it's very important for you to keep these two lenses with you. This is what we have covered so far. Okay, I'm just going to, for now, I'm going to explain these two lenses with some examples so you get a better idea of what I was saying. Okay, everybody, I hope everybody is with me so far. Now, let me give you the example of the most basic example of a chicken tikka. Okay, a chicken tikka is great. You marinate it, and it is the tastiest marination. But when does the magic happen? The magic happens when you put it in the tandoor. What happens in the tandoor? In the tandoor, heat application happens like any other cooking. You can put it in a pan. What will happen? Heat application will happen. You can put it in an oven. What will happen? Heat application will happen. So essentially, the process of cooking involves application of heat to a marinated or unmarinated ingredient, whatever it might be. Now, what happens when the heat application happens to a chicken tikka? Now, let's see it through these two lenses that I gave you. Okay. Now, let's look at every item individually. Okay. There is chicken, there is yogurt, there are spices, there is probably mustard oil, and then there is ginger garlic paste. Let's understand ingredient by ingredient, put these lenses and see what happened. Let's pull out the chicken first, because that's the most important part. That's the protein. Is the chicken palatable before application of heat? Can you eat raw chicken? No, you cannot. So the first thing that happens to a chicken is the protein inside the chicken cooks. Now, how does the protein inside the chicken cook? The protein inside the chicken cooks with the heat and the water that is present inside the chicken. The water inside the chicken evaporates and the protein inside the chicken cooks in that water that is already present inside the chicken, which you have locked inside the chicken with the marination. तो क्या हुआ? चिकन के अंदर के पानी ने चिकन के अंदर का प्रोटीन पका दिया. प्रोटीन का जो पकाने का प्रोसेस है उसको हम डीनेचराइजेशन भी बोलते हैं. That's the first change that has happened. It is important for you to observe this change. Can you do anything about that change? We are not scientists, and even if we wanted to, if that change hasn't changed in the last 150,000 years, then all we need to do is make friends with that change and use that change that happens with the application of food to become better chefs. Okay. What happens to the spices? Now, what happens is all the spices have essential oils in them. Okay. Now, all the essential oils, they are locked inside the spices. But when you get heat, even when you take a spice on your hands and rub it, give it a little bit of heat and you smell it, it smells. When you have perfume, why do you smell it? Why do you rub your hand, put it behind your hand where it is the warmest and then smell it? Because essential oils, whether it is perfumes or spices, they evaporate when you apply heat to them. And when you apply heat, they evaporate and you smell them. That was the second part, before and after. Okay, before application of heat, my lens is still the same. Before application of heat to an ingredient, after application of heat to an ingredient. We've gone through chicken, we've gone through spices. Now let's look at yogurt. Let's look at dahi. Okay, now what happens when you apply heat to a dahi? It splits, yeah? But what is the positive positive of splitting. Dahi has natural, like any other milk product, it has two things. It has fat and not fat. The fat, when it comes out, it creates, it leaves those flavors and it acts as a combining combining agent for those flavors. The solids, the milk solids, not fat, when they react with heat, they undergo a reaction called Browning reaction, which you guys will study. Okay. Now, what I did was I sort of told you that every time you apply heat to a chicken, this is what's going to happen. Every time that you apply heat to spices, this is what is going to happen. What is going to happen? Now, when you know that this is what is going to happen, you can work with it, you can work around it, you can make it better. Okay. For example, if you're putting unroasted raw coriander to finish a dish when it does not have so much opportunity with heat to lose those oils, you know that that is the mistake you made, because spices, if they're unroasted, need heat for them to leave their flavors. If your chicken is raw, you know that the protein cooks with the water that is inside, which means either I have to apply more heat or I have to apply heat for more time. So heat can be studied two ways, okay? Cooking is about two things. It's about application of heat, but it's about the temperature and time. How do you manage heat? आप manage heat ऐसे करते हैं, या तो आप समय बढ़ा देते हैं किसी चीज को पकाने का, या आप तापमान बढ़ा देते हैं. So any place that you want to manipulate heat, it's a function of temperature and time. Okay. For example, if I'm cooking my chicken and I wanted to cook fast, and I wanted to cook well, either I cook it at 160 degrees for 1 hour or 200 degrees for 30 minutes. I increase the time in one case and I increase the temperature in one case. So to understand and manipulate heat, you have to understand cooking mein heat is a function of time and temperature. And it's about finding the right balance of time and temperature for eventually good cooking. Okay. Whether it is the range of your burner or it is the temperature on your oven. Time and temperature is what determines application of heat. Okay. So I'm going to remove this chashma. What I did was I wore the chashma of heat and gave you examples of how ingredients react prior to application of heat and after the application of heat. Okay. Now, and then I also told you that when I say heat, there are two parameters on how you can allow heat to affect your food and those ingredients. One is time and the other is temperature, which essentially means cooking में समय और तापमान सबसे जरूरी होता है. Okay, everything will cook when you apply. If I put a chicken tikka in the tandoor at 300 degrees, then also it will cook. It will burn, it will char, and there are other things that will happen that I did not want. Okay, so to be a good chef, I need to understand heat. To understand heat, I need to understand time and temperature, and what difference do various combinations of time and temperature cause to my food. ये जो है गांठ बांध लीजिए सारी चीजें आप. Always keep this understanding in your pocket. Always keep this understanding in your pocket, saying, okay, so what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to cook it. But the first question should be, at what temperature am I cooking it and how long am I cooking it for? All right, because if you don't have control over time and temperature, you will not have control over your dish. You will not know what changes to make in order for the dish to cook better the next time. All right, that was part one. Part two, now let's look at the second lens. Dusra chashma dekhte hain hum. And the second lens that we want to look at is what happens to these individual. What we looked at was all these ingredients individually. Now let's look at what happens to all these ingredients combined. क्या होता है जब cooking होती है तो अलग-अलग ingredients साथ में आते हैं तो उनमें क्या होता है. Okay, now there are a lot of reactions that happen at two levels. one is a macro level. Macro level मतलब वो ingredients जो कि macronutrients हैं, जैसे कि proteins, sugars, carbohydrates, fats, वो एक किस्म का रिएक्शन होता है जो कि ज्यादातर आपके खाने के टेस्ट और टेक्सचर को इम्पैक्ट करता है. एनी चेंज इन फूड, खाने का जो स्केल होता है, हाउ यू मेजर फूड इज टेक्सचर, टेस्ट, flavor. Okay, presentation is always there, but when you are eating something, you always look for flavor, texture, and taste. Okay, now when you say flavor, texture, and taste, texture means soft, crunchy, crispy, juicy. These are all textures जो कि आप महसूस कर सकते हैं. Texture is something that you can feel. It's a tactile sense. Okay. Now, taste. Taste is very simple. There are anything that you can count on 5 fingers is taste. So sweet, sour, salty, spicy. That essentially is sweet, sour, salty, spicy, and bitter. These are the 5 tastes. The 6th taste is umami. So always pull out your 5 fingers. Remind yourself of these shadrasas or these pancharasas that are there in your 5 fingers. That is the 5 parameters of taste that you're looking at. So texture is what you feel. Taste is these 5 things. And flavors. Okay. Now, when you're looking at flavors, you always need to remember that flavors is something that you immediately get reminded of when you eat something. Okay. For example, if you are eating a dish that you've never eaten, but it's reminding you of your dal that your mom cooks, it's okay. Just lock that flavor in your head, saying, this is like the dal that my mom cooks. It's very important not to get confused in this world of flavors, because as you go along, you will realize that your vocabulary of flavors is increasing. After some time, smoky is going to become a flavor, blueberry is going to become a flavor, oak is going to become a flavor. A lot of these new words are going to come in your flavor profile, but for now, don't get confused. Whenever you are understanding cooked food, look at it from taste, texture, and flavor, where flavor is whatever connection you make of it is flavor. Agar aapko jamun jaisa lag raha hai wo, to jamun is the flavor that you want to associate it with. Okay? So, in these 3 parameters is how you will measure reactions with the second lens. Like the first lens ka parameter is temperature and taste, because it is about purely the application of heat to an ingredient. The second lens ka parameter is taste, texture, and flavor. Taste, remember those 5 things. Texture is how it feels. Does it feel dry? Does it feel juicy? When I taste it, how does it feel? Does it feel crunchy? Does it feel crispy? Does it feel slimy? Does it feel liquidy? Does it feel snappy? How does it feel? That's texture, tactile, okay? And flavor. Flavor is the first connection you make with it in your head from your memory. That is flavor. So for understanding the second chashma, you need to keep these things with you all the time. Now, what happens when you cook? A combination of all these ingredients changes the taste, texture, and the flavor of food. So if I were to look at a chicken tikka again, now suddenly when I taste it, I see it is a little sour, it is a little bitter, it's a little sweet, okay? Now the sweetness is coming from the chicken, it's also coming from the sugars in the milk solids, the sourness is coming from yogurt, the spiciness is coming from the marination. Now suddenly all of this together combined, every ingredient, once heat got applied, it all came together as a dish which I can judge on these 3 parameters, which is taste, texture, and flavor. Okay? Or if this combination is not working, you need to break it down saying, okay, what is not working? Is the taste not working? Is the texture not working? Is the flavor not working? And then go backwards and change it. For example, while texture and taste is easy to understand, when I have a chicken tikka, is it reminding me too much of let's say jhalmuri? Okay. Now, if it's reminding me too much of a jhalmuri, that essentially means my mustard in the chicken tikka is too high. That's why I'm getting reminded of a jhalmuri more than a chicken tikka. So the connections that you make automatically allow you to go back and fix food. Okay. So what we did today is essentially, first we spoke about how cooking is an old science, and all that cooking is the application of heat to an ingredient. Then we said, okay, if it is about application of heat, then it is very important to understand what the application of heat does to every ingredient, for which you need to study from your books also. Okay. There is an author called Harold McGee, HAROLD MCGEE. Okay. He's the author who's extensively written on, and most of his work is available online. He's extensively written on what happens when you apply heat to ingredients. You probably need to read about him. You need to read his work. Even if you don't understand it, it's all right. It's good to know. You will gradually understand it. When you start cooking and you keep that lens on, it will all start making sense. Okay, so the second thing that we discussed was application of heat to every ingredient, and how do ingredients react, and why do they react the way they react to the application of heat. Application of heat can be dry heat, moist heat, oil-based heat. You will learn all that as methods of cooking, essentially the same thing. Now, when we moved ahead, we understood that when we say application of heat, it is two parameters that we need to understand in application of heat. We need to understand that application of heat is about time and it is about temperature. It is not about anyone. Okay? It is not about saying, oh, pakana hi to hai, to gas tez kar do. Okay? It is not. Food will cook. But what is that optimal balance of time and temperature is what determines good chefs from great chefs. And that's what you always need to have as a lens throughout, whenever you're cooking, saying what time and what temperature works best. We all know that if we put, if we put mutton at really, really high heat, it might cook, but it'll never be juicy. Why? Because there is a time, and along with temperature, there's also time that we need to respect when it comes to cooking. Heat does not only mean temperature. Heat means time and temperature. That was the other part that we learned, okay? I'm just revising it because if you're writing it, you need to go back. If you need to append your notes, now is a good time. Then we said, okay, now we've understood what reaction does heat cause individually to an ingredient. Even if we have not, through chicken tikka, we've at least opened the doors on how to use the lens. You need to keep the lens with you and use the lens for the rest of your life if cooking is something that you want to do. Then we said, in the second part, what do we need to do? We said in the second part, let's now understand how these ingredients come together and what are those reactions that happen when I look at ingredients separately versus how they come together. And that, we said, happens by studying three parameters of cooked food. It happens by studying taste, which is the Shad Rasas or the Panch Rasas. Just remember 5 fingers, 5 rasas: khatta, meetha, tikha, kadwa, or namkeen. Just remember that. When I say taste, it should automatically, you should be able to lift your 5 fingers and say how sweet, how salty, how bitter, how spicy, and how sour. Okay, everything will have that. Everything will have 5 rasas. It's impossible for some things might be more sweet, some things might be less sweet. The sweetest of desserts have a note of bitterness and a note of natural saltiness in them. The spiciest and the most bitterest of things have a note of sweetness in them. Only thing that happens is some things in some dishes it goes higher, some dishes it goes lower, in some dishes it's very, very small, In some dishes is extremely high. But anything that you taste, you need to find those pancharasas. Okay, I'm not talking about umami. You will get there. Let's start with these five rasas. So when you're saying दूसरा चश्मा पहना हुआ है, उसमें सबसे पहला पैरामीटर टेस्ट है. टेस्ट में आपकी हथेली तुरंत निकल जानी चाहिए और आपको किसी भी खाने को इन 5 टेस्ट के हिसाब से समझना आना चाहिए. How sweet, how bitter, how salty, how spicy, how sour. दूसरी चीज जो हमने बोली वो थी टेक्सचर. एंड देन अगेन वी आर इन द सेकंड चश्मा. सेकंड चश्मे में understanding texture is really important, because texture is how you feel. Texture is the tactile sense, the sense of touch. अगर आप किसी चीज को फील करते हो, अगर आप कटहल को ऊपर से फील करते हो, you don't feel pleasant when you rub the skin on it. Why? Because feel is very, very subconscious. It triggers a sense of distaste and dislike immediately. Okay. However, when you eat a chicken tikka, it is juicy. The texture is juicy. You feel it's nice. When you eat a golgappa, fuchka, pani puri, pani batasha, fulki, whatever you call it, you are enjoying the texture because there is a snap on the outside and it's nice and liquidy on the inside. So texture is how you feel mentally and tactile wise and physically, how you feel. And that is why taste, texture are both really important when you're studying cooked food after putting the second lens. The third thing that we discussed was flavor. Okay, and what I told you was that flavor is extremely overrated and complicated. What you need to start on your journey of flavor is just start connecting what you're tasting, elements of what you're tasting, to what you have tasted before. And gradually your vocabulary will increase. You will have more examples to give to yourself. All of us, flavor is a matter of life experience. When you eat more, taste more, your vocabulary of flavor is going to increase. For now, if you're tasting chicken tikka, then if the mustard reminds you of jhalmuri, that is okay. If the mustard reminds you of the bhajia that your grandmother makes in sarson ka tel, that is okay. What you need to do is find a connection point in your head to be able to understand flavor. Understand it the way you want to, but make that connection for everything that is coming into your head. Saying, oh, अच्छा वो भजिया जैसी mustardness थी. Oh, वो मैंने वो जो चिकन टिक्का मसाला या बटर चिकन खाया था, उसके जैसा कसूरी मेथी का फ्लेवर था. It's all right. Doesn't really matter. Nobody is saying blackberry. Nobody is saying sweet like blackberry, tart like plums. Okay. Make the connection the way you want to make those connections. As long as you make those connections, you would have started to understand this world of flavor. All right. And that for me is more or less everything that you do for the rest of your life. If you keep these 2 lenses on, it will make you a better chef. If you keep these 2 lenses, one lens is what is happening to every ingredient individually when I cook it. And the second lens is what's happening to collectively to all ingredients when it becomes a dish. अलग-अलग क्यों टेस्टी नहीं थे और एक साथ आके क्यों टेस्टी हो गए? क्यों ये डिश बन गई? उन 3 पैरामीटर्स पे, टेस्ट, टेक्सचर, फ्लेवर के पैरामीटर पे. अगर आप वो चश्मे अपने पास रखेंगे throughout not just these 3 years, throughout your life, you will become better chefs. Even if you don't want to become chefs, you will understand food better than most people that you meet. But it's very important to do that. Okay. And always remember, cooking is science. You cannot deny it, but it is not rocket science. It's basic science. It's the most basic science that you can encounter. You learned in the organic chemistry that you learned in 8th, which you probably didn't really care about then, is going to come in very handy when you really want to delve deeper into cooking. What happens? Why do sugar caramelize? What happens when sugar that is C, H, and O, why does it become black? Because H and O leave the CH and O compound as H2O, water, and what's left is C. C is carbon. Carbon is black. That's why sugar caramelizes. That's why sugar becomes black. You need to be able to understand the most basic, it's very basic science. But if you build your cooking on science in the first 4 or 5 years, then you can create magic on top of that. You cannot create magic without understanding the science behind that magic. Okay, you give me any reaction, it can be explained with science. Okay, every flavor that you see is purely ethers and esters, which is something that you read in class 8 or class 9, but never really cared about. Ki humne isse kya karna hai. Yeah, remember that toothpaste-like smell that used to come when you used to when you used to do ethers and esters experiments in chemistry class in 8th. That essentially is all. Most flavor compounds in fruits are ethers and esters. Unless you understand how they react to heat, you will not be able to understand the magic of cooking. So that's all. It's very basic science, but it's important to understand that science. It's important to, you don't have to do a PhD in it. Okay, but it's important to remember that if you want to be, if you want to do magic, you need to understand this science today. I'm not going to complicate your life anymore. Okay, a lot of it is in your first year syllabus. For example, basic scientific reactions like emulsification. जो आप लोग 7th 8th में पढ़ते थे कि सेडिमेंटेशन क्या होता है, सस्पेंशन क्या होता है, इमल्शन क्या होता है, वही सारी चीजें आपके सामने आएंगी. प्लीज बी ओपन. अगर आप आज इमल्सिफिकेशन नहीं समझ पाए तो मेयोनेज, हॉलैंडेज और बहुत तमाम तरह के साइंटिफिक प्रोसेसेस जो हमारी कुकिंग को बेटर करते हैं, वो आप शायद नहीं समझ पाएंगे, उनको मास्टर नहीं कर पाएंगे आने वाले टाइम में. Okay, so it's whatever you're going to study in the first year especially is going to be a lot about the most basic science, which is explained really, really well. Be open to it. Be open to it. Okay, after a few years, it's going to become your second nature. You won't even need to think about how to make an emulsion or what is a stabilizer. Yeah. So that's whether it is, what we spoke was that cooking is the application of heat to an ingredient. That's basically what your definition of cooking is going to be. And then in your book, there are going to be various methods, whether it is moist heat. Moist heat is boiling. Moist heat is boiling, steaming. Dry heat is baking, broiling. It's all the same. Everything can be viewed with those two lenses. Okay. And I'm going to leave it here. But like I said, it's not rocket science, but it's science and it's important to understand it. I'm going to answer these important questions. The first important question is secrets to being a celebrity chef. The important secret to being a celebrity chef, I'm sharing it with all of you, is you have to work really, really, really hard at being a good chef. Okay. Unless you're able to do that, you really can't be a celebrity chef of substance, because you can't always look at the camera and smile. At some point in time, you will have to meet people. And when they see the real you need to have substance, you need to have knowledge, you need to have a relationship with food that inspires them. Okay. That's the secret to being a celebrity chef. Be a good chef first, and then it'll be much easier for you to become a celebrity chef.
Super, Chef. That was superly well, and few questions coming in. I'll take it for you.
Sure.
I've got Saurav asking from Calcutta, proper definition of emulsification.
So Saurav, emulsification is basically creating a solution of two ingredients that would not match. Okay, two ingredients that would otherwise separate. When you bring them together and you create a stable solution, it's called emulsification. Those ingredients can be water and air. Those ingredients can be water and oil. Those ingredients can be oil and air. Any two ingredients that would otherwise not combine, when you combine them to form a stable solution, is emulsification. In cooking, you do that all the time with mayonnaise. You do that all the time with hollandaise. You emulsify most of your sauces when you finish them by a process called beurre monté, in which you incorporate butter to a sauce to finish it. That is emulsification.
All right, Chef, another question coming in is from Divyam, Section A. Delhi, what was the main thing which helped you achieve success in your life? Of course, little related to your life, not to the subject.
I think what is important is, again, it's probably a little too heavy for all of you right now, but what's important is to understand that that success is a measure that's generally set by the outside world, and the moment you sort of start chasing that measure, you're never successful, because the outside world keeps lifting that bar. So what's important to understand is never chase success. Never chase success. Always internalize things. Set goals for yourself. Set goals that are higher than the goals that the others have set for you. That's the only way to get ahead of this whole success phenomenon. You say I'm successful. I say I'm extremely unsuccessful. I have a long way to go, because your measure of success is not what I'm chasing. I might have crossed it, fortunately, but it doesn't really mean that that because you say I'm successful in my head, I'm successful. I'm not. So always set your standards of success. Don't chase it. Always set your standards of success, and unless your standards are way higher than what the measure of success currently is, there's no point even chasing it.
Super. Sir, Disha Jaiswal asking us from Delhi, how much time it will take for us to learn how to balance between heat and time?
It's an ongoing journey. I'm doing that still. It's an ongoing journey. These are lenses that you always need to keep. These are questions that you always need to ask. Whenever I cook something, I ask myself these things. I have become better at it. In some more years, I will become really good at it probably, but you really can't master temperature and time, because you really can't. That's the whole beauty of this journey called cooking, is that you enjoy the journey of balancing temperature and time. What you will definitely get is if you use these lenses in the next 2 to 3 odd years, you will have a fair idea of what graph of temperature and time works for what sort of ingredients. इसको कम समय में लंबे समय तक, कम टेम्परेचर पे लंबे समय तक पकाना है, इसको ज्यादा तापमान में कम समय तक पकाना है. एक रफ आइडिया आपको लग जाएगा, लेकिन हर कॉम्बिनेशन, हर डिश एक यूनिक कॉम्बिनेशन है जिसको एक यूनिक ट्रीटमेंट चाहिए टेम्परेचर एंड टाइम का. And that is, it's like putting a Lego piece together. You enjoy it every time you put it together.
Super. Chef Vishal Venkatesh from IIHM Bangalore is asking that there's a saying that the recipe is the same, ingredients are the same, process is the same, but food is cooked by different people in different hands, which makes the difference in taste. Your views on this, and why is it so?
Yeah. I think when you are in third year, I will probably explain that to you better. Those things, there is a tangible part to food. कुछ चीजें खाने में measure हो सकती हैं, कुछ चीजें measure नहीं हो सकती हैं. जो measure नहीं हो सकती हैं, वो philosophy के realm में जाती हैं, जो जब आप third year में पहुंचेंगे तो बहुत बेहतर तरीके से समझेंगे. तब मैं आपको समझाऊंगा. आज की डेट में आपको science समझना बहुत जरूरी है, इसलिए मैं आपको distract नहीं करूंगा. Okay, when you reach third year, we'll pick up that question. We'll take that topic and we will break it down for you as to what is it about food that you cannot measure, and what is it about the human touch that makes a difference. Why do we talk about feelings? Why do we talk about emotions when it comes to food? Okay, for you right now, as in first year and second year, it's very important to hone these two lenses, scientific lenses, because art is built on an understanding of science. Even when you are an artist, you need to understand principles of art and elements of design. You cannot be a magician without structure. Okay, so we'll make you Picassos Don't worry about it, but currently focus on the science behind it.
Super. Chef, another question coming in from Calcutta. Sanchayan is asking this. Is temperature and time are inversely proportional in cooking?
Doesn't really matter. More or less, you could put that across, saying, हाँ, अगर मैं कहीं पे भी temperature बढ़ा रहा हूँ, तो मेरे को time कम करना पड़ेगा, because the impact of that temperature has to be reduced. अगर मैं किसी को 300 डिग्री पे पका रहा हूँ और 3 घंटे के लिए पका रहा हूँ, तो obviously वो कोयला बन जाएगी. Broadly, they are inversely proportional, but the understanding here is not. The understanding here is more to do with the relationship between both.
All right, great. Thank you, Chef. Vidhi is asking, how will you know that the ingredients which you are putting is done correctly or the right ingredients are going in a dish?
You can start with working with recipes that others have worked with. So you know, see what is important is, it's important to, when you're starting on your journey, it's important to cook dishes that have been cooked before, okay, for you to gain that confidence and for you to be able to understand what is good food and what is good science that creates good food. Once you are done with that and you've done that enough, that is the time when you can apply your brain and decide what is going to be a good set of ingredients for creating a new dish. What's very important for you right now is, as first years, just stick to the basics. Cook recipes that are sure, cook recipes that have been cooked, cook classics that don't fail, for you to understand that before you start deciding what combination of ingredients sort of goes well together. It's very important for you to cook foolproof in the first year to be able to appreciate cooking and understand good food.
Okay, just about time to take the last question in. We're about 1 minute to 1. So Likhita Babu is asking this question. Can you refer few books relating to the science you had explained just now? Some few books that you can refer or we can buy.
I think in the first year, I wouldn't suggest any books. You probably can go to Harold McGee's website, The Curious Cook, if you want to get his book, or I think it'll be there in your libraries when you access your institute. Beyond that, your basic cookery books is what you really need to get to. What I told you was that you need to keep these lenses on. Life will get complicated after first year. That's when you will need to get those books. I'm not going to tell you those names now. I'm going to leave it with my friend Abdullah. So when you get to second year, we'll talk about those books. Guys, it is very important to understand. अगर अच्छा शेफ बनना है, तो सबसे पहले अच्छा हमाल बनना, अच्छा मसालची बनना बहुत जरूरी है. You need to learn to be a bloody good listener and a very good and obedient cook before you start being a chef. You need to learn. You need to remember that the only way to learn writing books is to learn from alphabets. Whatever you know so far is great, but it will not help you. You need to unlearn and you need to say, okay, let's start from ABC once again. You need to be structured. The reason you are in an institute is because we are trying to put structure to your education. और वो structure अगर आप break करके और पहले ही Z पढ़ लेंगे एक ही बजाय, तो आपको ये लगेगा कि आपको आता है लेकिन आपको कुछ आता नहीं होगा. तो आप A से लेकर X, Y को सब डिसरिगार्ड कर देंगे क्योंकि आपको लगेगा कि आपने किताब का आखिरी पन्ना पढ़ लिया. किताब का आखिरी पन्ना पढ़ने से सिर्फ यही पता लगता है कि मर्डर किसने किया. ये नहीं पता लगता कि स्टोरी क्या है. Okay, this is a journey. It's about a story. Take it step by step. Structure it well. There is a reason why education is there, because it adds structure to your learning. Structure, yaad rakhna. Structure. A before B, B before C. Don't jump the gun. You will have a wrong feeling that you know more. You will not know more. You will be, aapko lagega. It's like murder mystery ka last page example. Always remember that. You will just feel that you know more. You will not. Because to know more, you need to know it all. not know the last page.
Super. All right. Thank you, Chef Ranveer. With this, we come to the end of the session. Loads and loads of questions I can see. Unfortunately, we are short on time. It was an absolute pleasure to have you, Chef Ranveer, with us. And for the last parting shot, I will take it to Dr. Bose to bring him in and say his few words before we close the session. Over to you, Dr. Bose.
Yeah, once again, a fascinating session. Chef, as usual, Ranveer Brar at his best. I think it was excellent, super, very inspiring, and look forward to more session from the maestro himself. And as I said to all my students, that this is IIHM education. So this is not an YouTube lecture. So everything that you have learned today and everything you will be learning from people like Chef Ranveer Brar needs to be put in a tablet, in a notebook. And this is what the education is all about. This has been all the classes. These are not just YouTube lectures, which you can get free of cost in any channel. So thanks very much, Chef, for being with us, and look forward to see you soon. And well, you are looking smashing as usual. And I'm sure everybody loved it.
Dr. Bose, the feeling is very mutual. So.
So thanks very much. We'll catch up soon. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
IIHM, International Institute of Hotel Management.